Conclusion. Recommendations related to policy and practice. Dear students, we know that social sciences researchers are always based on, highlighting a problem and then proposing some sort of solutions to the problem, right? So when you reach the final stage of your study and you finalize your conclusion, then you must keep in mind that there should be some recommendations which are related to policy and practice, particularly when you are dealing with contemporary issues and those issues are to be solved. Okay, so the implications for policy and practice are really important to be highlighted, right? And they should be highlighted through relevant quarters, right? So for that purpose, the policy for government institutions must be, finalized, and the course of actions or the course of action should be, recommended to the properly, proper authorities. Okay, so these are the points which must be kept by researchers. And the practice for a specific community or the practices for specific community must also be highlighted with proper, recommendations and implications. For example, if you are working on a particular aspect of English language teaching practices or methodologies, then your findings should reach your community of practice, which is, the ELT community of the country. So the ELT community of the country, they must be, accessed through relevant quarters. One way to recommend that is when you include those points in your conclusion, and then you publish your paper in a relevant journal, and finally it is reaching the the specific community in the country. What are possible consequences is a question which must be addressed while finalizing your conclusion and while giving up the recommendations for the the policy and the practice. A researcher should highlight findings related to the policy and practice, and then having proved everything, the recommendations must be made clear, right? So the teaching methodologies, for example, for the teaching community should be sent, and the the recommendations for practice or practices must also be highlighted, right? So these are the points which must be taken up. And another example is that if you want to work on syllabus design, you completed your study on particular curriculum, you evaluated a course, or you design a course, right? So until and unless you recommend something to the community of practice and your recommended course reaches them, your study is, useless, right? So in this case, you must be recommending to the relevant community through relevant quarters, right? So that is the point where recommendations regarding policy and practice must be, highlighted, right? Then the point is that who should know it? The people who are the stakeholders. And who are the stakeholders? For example, the practitioners are the stakeholders. The policy makers are the stakeholders. The students are the stakeholders. Their parents are the stakeholders. And the government institutions are the stakeholders. So those stakeholders must be kept in mind. And then on the basis of the context, those recommendations should be highlighted. And recommendations are basically the take-home messages, which are taken up by the readers, right? So your readers are reading your study and they are taking the message. So a researcher should share the relevant authorities, the recommendations related to policy and practice. And the recommendations should include, the summary of the new meanings, the summary of the new knowledge, and the new knowledge or the new ways, the new ideas should be highlighted in the recommendation section of the conclusion, and the conclusion section should include those recommendations which are related to policy and practice of the specific field.